Let's talk some chess. This game was played in 1991 as part of the candidates match. It was played in Brussels. Vassily Ivanchuk is playing with white pieces, and Artur Yusupov is playing with black pieces. The game is called Yusupov's Immortal, so that gives us sort of a hint as to where it's going to go, but let's kick things off with c4 from Ivanchuk. We have e5 in response, g3, d6, bishop to g2, g6, d4 striking in the center, knight to d7, protecting that e5 pawn, knight to c3, bishop to g7, so both bishops being kettled on the king side, knight to f3, knight g to f6, and both players castle king side. So we have very standard opening stuff. The pawns are controlling a bit of the center of the board. Both sides have developed 3 minor pieces, and both sides have castled king side. We have queen to c2 by Ivanchuk, rook to e8 by Yusupov, rook to d1 lining up with the enemy queen, and now c6 by Yusupov, opening up potentially an escape hatch for this queen if needed. We have b3, queen to e7, and now bishop to a3 by Ivanchuk. And the idea here is to get this bishop on the same line as the enemy queen, so now this d6 pawn is pinned to the queen, it can't march forward, but the problem is that this allows Yusupov to get e4 in. So here, the engine prefers that you just take the pawn on e5 instead of moving the bishop to a3, just take the pawn on e5, but Ivanchuk has no interest in that. He develops his bishop, and now Yusupov gets this e4 move in. And you're attacking the knight here. The knight has to retreat. You are attacking this pawn twice with the white pieces, with the knight and the queen, but Yusupov is defending it 3 times with the knight, the queen, and the rook, so the knight just, the knight just moves to g5, and now you are attacking this pawn 3 times. So Yusupov marches the pawn forward again. He plays e3, and now you can't just take the pawn back with f takes on e3, because this allows queen to e3 with check, forking the king and the knight, so you just lose a piece here. So instead, Ivanchuk just plays f4, getting out of harm's way, but now the problem is you have this very strong pawn sort of entrenched on e3, protected by the queen and the rook, and really kind of cramping the king's position here, preventing the king from walking up the board to f2. Even if the king escapes to the queen side, the king can't escape via d2, so this is a really nice pawn to have deep in Ivanchuk's position. We have knight to f8, sort of rerouting some pieces to the king side, b4 now, expanding on the queen side, so you're going to see sort of Yusupov pushing his pieces forward on the king side, Ivanchuk pushing his pieces forward on the queen side, and you know, we'll see who wins, but spoiler alert, both kings are on the king side, so that sort of tells you which side is more important in this game. We have bishop to f5 with a tempo on the queen. Queen obviously has to move, so we get queen to b3, h6 now, kicking the knight away from g5, knight retreats to f3, knight to g4, so just really slowly advancing all these pieces closer to the enemy king. b5 now, marching on the queen side and opening up this bishop again for Ivanchuk. g5 in response. B takes on c6, b takes back on c6, and now knight to e5 by Ivanchuk. This looks like a sacrifice, but it's not. If the pawn takes, then the bishop just picks up the queen. So instead, of course, Yusupov sees this and takes, g takes on f4, and now knight takes on c6 with the tempo on the queen. So Yusupov is breaking through on the queen side. He has a queen, a knight, and a bishop, and has sort of gotten rid of these 2 pawns and is attacking the queen. And after the queen moves to g5, Ivanchuk is breaking through on the queen side, not Yusupov. Ivanchuk takes on d6 with the bishop. And now Ivanchuk has these 2 wonderful passed pawns that are just going to march up the c and d files. He has this knight and this bishop and this other knight and the rook behind the passed pawns, but the problem is Yusupov just has so much artillery on the king side where the enemy king is. He has these 2 wonderful pawns. He has the bishop, the queen, and the knight, and Ivanchuk is going to try to promote his pawns before he runs out of time, and sort of spoiler alert, he's not going to have enough time to get his pawns down the board. We have knight to g6 by Yusupov, getting another piece involved in the attack. Knight to d5 by Ivanchuk, queen to h5, now lining up with the knight on the h2 pawn, so h4 prevents the queen from capturing, but now we just get knight takes on h4 by Yusupov, sacrificing a knight to get rid of these 2 pawns and clear the way for the black pieces to attack the enemy king. So g takes on h4, you have to sort of accept the sacrifice, and now queen takes on h4, and now there's just a lot of pressure against the enemy king. Here, Yusupov plays knight d to e7 with check, and this is knight d to e7 with check. This is a reasonable move, and we'll sort of see how this line continues, but it's actually a case of the wrong knight. I think I read the annotations of a Bobby Fischer game at some point, and he said his opponent took with the wrong rook. Here, Ivanchuk, not Yusupov. Ivanchuk is taking with the wrong knight. Here, you want to take with the knight on c6, and I'll tell you why. After knight moves to e7 with check, king moves to h8. Now knight takes bishop on f5, and there's still a knight on d5. And why is that important? Well, now you have two pieces sort of attacking this f4 square, the knight and the bishop. So the bishop can come to f4 and be protected by the knight, and we'll see why that's important when we saw the attack that Yusupov actually chose. So keep that in mind. It would be really nice to have a knight on d5 for defending this attack that Yusupov is about to launch. But Ivanchuk didn't play this. He played knight d to e7 with check. King goes to h8, knight takes on f5, and now queen to h2 with check. And now the king runs to f1, and we have rook to e6 by Yusupov. So a nice rook lift, getting ready to get the rook on into the game and into the attack. And here, imagine if there was a knight on d5. Now the bishop could take on f4, and the bishop would be protected by the knight, and so the bishop will be threatening the queen, and the queen would sort of have to evacuate the position. As it is now, you can't obviously just take with the bishop because the queen takes back with check, and then the game is essentially over. So that's why taking with it was a case of the wrong knight. You want to keep your knight on d5 to protect this f4 square. Anyways, we have this rook lift. The rook is obviously attacking the bishop on d6, although it is defended, but more importantly, the rook is trying to get to g6 and join in on this attack. But Ivanchuk ignores it for now and just plays queen to b7, kind of taking advantage of this undefended rook on a8. The proper move here, and this is really the last chance to defend, is playing knight to c7, knight c to e7, sorry. This abandons the defense of the bishop, but it does prevent the rook from getting to g6 and sort of cements these two knights together close to the enemy king. So this is the last sort of chance to really defend, but instead Ivanchuk plays really aggressively and plays queen to b7, attacking this attacking this rook on a8. We have rook to g6, just as planned for Yusupov, completely ignoring that his rook is under fire on a8, and Ivanchuk, of course, just takes. Queen takes with check. Only move that makes sense is king to h7. And now it's sort of tricky to sort of find a continuation for Ivanchuk. Here he opts for sacrificing the queen on g8, so he plays queen to g8 with check. King captures on g8, and the reason the queen came to g8 and not h8 is because it forces the king to capture, which allows knight to e7 with check, now forking the king and the rook. So king back to h7, and now knight takes on g6, which was the original idea, but now you're sort of lost a queen if you're playing with the white pieces. So knight takes on g6, f takes on g6, and now knight captures the bishop on g7. And if we do a quick material check here, Ivanchuk has two rooks, the bishop pair, and a knight just to Yusupov's knight and queen. So Ivanchuk has so much more material, but Yusupov, of course, has the attack. Ivanchuk's king is in a much more unsafe position, and this pawn is still doing a great job of sort of hemming this king in and not allowing any possible escape, along with the queen and the knight. So here we have knight to f2 by Yusupov, getting the knight to a really threatening square on f2, attacking the rook on d4, and here the kind of the move that Ivanchuk plays, which is the correct move, is actually bishop takes on f4. Sacrificing the bishop, so you're attacking the queen here, and here Yusupov just takes back. The idea behind this move is you need to sack the bishop, because if you just make some other move, maybe rook d to b1, getting out of harm's way from the knight, this actually leads to mate in just a couple of moves, because you get knight to e4. There's no moves that make sense here for Ivanchuk. Let's say he plays a3, and now knight to d2 with check, king to e1, and queen to g1 with checkmate. So you have to get this queen away from the h2 square, and Ivanchuk realizes this and does it with bishop takes on f4. So here Yusupov just captures, queen takes on f4, and now knight to e6 by Ivanchuk, getting the knight out of harm's way from the king and attacking the queen on f4. Queen back to h2, where it's obviously in a threatening position, and now Ivanchuk brings his rook to the open b file, hoping to get the rook to b7, and now at that point the rook and the knight could cause some real problems for the enemy king. But it was in this position that Yusupov really put the game out of hand. So take a moment and see if you can find the winning move for Yusupov while I give you a couple of seconds. Okay, it's a little bit tricky here because you really want to move this queen to the back rank, but obviously you can't move it to h1 because bishop takes. You can't move it to g1 because king takes. And the proper move here is actually with the knight, and that's what Yusupov played. He played knight to h3, which isn't even a check. It doesn't capture a piece, but it sets up a wonderful mating net for the king. You can't capture the knight here because then queen to f2 is mate, so you have to obviously worry about that. So instead, Ivanchuk first of all plays rook to b7 check, forcing the king to the back rank, and after king to h8, even rook to b8 check. Well, again, you could dance with the king forever, or Yusupov could just pick up the rook with the queen, which is what he does. And here Ivanchuk knew this, of course, and he just sort of played this rook to b8 to get the queen off of this really threatening h2 square. So the queen picks up the rook, and now Ivanchuk takes the knight on h3. Actually, I think I'm reading this wrong. Yeah. In this position, after the queen took the rook, this is when Ivanchuk resigned the game because even though he still has a slight material advantage and these two passed pawns, Yusupov is going to find mate in a very few couple of moves. So let's say that Ivanchuk just took the knight on h3. This actually leads to mate in just 2 moves. The queen runs right back to g3, and now no matter where the king goes, it's going to be checkmate very soon. The king can't move to in fact, sorry, the king can't even move. I'm stumbling at the end of the video. The king can't even move, can't go to e1 or g1. The queen is guarding all these squares, and now no matter what move you make, the queen is coming to f2 with checkmate. Even if you don't take the knight, there is a 14 move mate that Yusupov will eventually get Ivanchuk in. You could play knight to c5, queen to g3, and now knight to e3, sort of protecting this f2 square. But now just queen to h2, king to e1, king takes the bishop, king to d1, queen takes the knight, and now you can sort of see how not only are you up a lot of material, but mate is coming soon. So it was after this queen captured on b8 that Ivanchuk resigned the game, and just a pretty cool game where both sides attacked on the opposite sides of the board, but the kings were on the king side, so the player attacking on the king side ended up winning. And it's sort of unfortunate for Ivanchuk because he had these 2 wonderful passed pawns that he never got to push forward because Yusupov's attack was so great. So hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Drop a like, drop subscribe. Let me know of other games you'd like me to review, and we'll see you next time.